Hello, I'm Sean Green and welcome to another edition of Remembering School. When this young lady first entered the Coleridge and Parry school back in the early 80s, she was disappointed only because she wanted to attend the secondary school which bore her name.
My name is Nicole Alleyne. I am a past student of the Coleridge and Parry school. I went there from 1984 until 1990. Initially, I was disappointed because I wanted to go to the Alleyne school only because of vanity. My name was Alleyne, and I thought that it was fitting that I go to the school that my name was named after. That was all to it. There was nothing else to it. But when I got there, what I should say is that my older brother, he's a year and a half older than I am, he also attended Coleridge and Parry school. So in my mind, I was like, Lord have mercy, to see him at home and then to see him at school too. But when I got there, it was a whole different world for me. Even though we went to the same school, we were miles apart. We never really saw each other, never really interacted. We attended the same school for 5 years, and hardly anybody knew that we were related. I remember an orientation. I remember going to get my school books, the textbooks. That was an experience. Lord of the Flies. I remember the integrated science book. I remember the chemistry book. I still have, they're not CP's textbooks, but over the years, I acquired textbooks that look similar. I mean, that's my disclaimer. But I remember the biology book. I remember the integrated science and the math books. My favorite subject was English language. And I had the best English language teacher when I got into third form, when I repeated third form. I got Mr. Gregory Grisette. He became my English teacher then, and that just took me on a different path completely. And I remember getting these textbooks that other students read and looking at the condition and being told, you know, if you don't return them in the condition that they were given to you, you had to do this inspection, you know, that you would have to pay a fee. And I remember my mom saying, you better look after these textbooks good so you don't, because obviously forfeiting that refund or that petty fee was a lot at the time. So I remember going home and wrapping these school books in plastic and making sure that, you know, when I put them in my school bag, that I had them in a plastic bag so that they wouldn't get wet if my drink threw away. It was a process. But when I was there, we wore the overall and it had the zip. So it was I was thankful then that I did not go to the Alleyne school, because then I just jumped in. You know, if you were kind of late, you just jumped in and you went. But outside of that, it was a khaki uniform with the epaulettes. Mine was a little bit short, but I just love that uniform. I still do have it up to this day. When I got into senior school, I wore a gray skirt that was never the appropriate length, and I wore a white shirt with the tie, and I would interchange with the epaulettes depending on what mood I was in, because I had both. At the time, you could wear both epaulette, or you had the option, but you could wear whatever. They were never to my ankle. I remember when I got into fourth form, Miss Farley said to me, because the plan was at the end of third form, when we were going into fourth form, all of the girls got together and said we were going to wear our skirts above the knee. I got the skirts made below the knee, but when I saw how long that was, I was like, never. So I sat down the couple nights before and I adjusted them to my length. And when I got to school that morning, I was the only person with the skirt above the knee. And I was defiant. I was called and told that I had to, you know, get the uniform, the skirt to the appropriate length. And that was Miss Farley. And I told her, okay. But I did my years with my skirt above the knee. It wasn't like significantly above the knee, but there's no way I could, no.
Nicole recalls some of the early friendships made at the school.
So in first form, I went into one Coleridge. I made friends with, not necessarily in my class, but I made friends with Philemon Springer. We were still very good friends. There was John, can't remember John's last name now, but he and I ended up fighting over a bag of nuts in first form. I also made friends with Lana Francis. She was one of my neighbors. And there were some others, but those were people who were in my immediate, circle.
Did Nicole just admit to fighting over a bag of nuts? Let's hear more about that.
One day, I was standing on the outside of the classroom, like just by the door, and a pack of nuts landed in front of me. And I reached down, picked it up, and I asked, who do these nuts belong to? And nobody answered. And then all of a sudden, John came and he was like, he wanted his nuts. I said, but how do I know that these nuts belong to you? And we just ended up fighting. And I remember scratching his face, pulling off his epaulette. I was a little terror at times. And we got called to the principal's office. And I think both of us got lashes that day. But that was the first and last time I fought at school.
All that over a bag of nuts. But at least they still remain close friends to this very day. And Nicole recalls the close friendship shared between the Coleridge and Parry and the Alexandra schools.
There was a good relationship between the two schools. One of my fondest memories was when I was part of the debating society, and I was the seconder on the debating team, and we had to compete against the Alexandra School. Karen Whitaker was the lead for that debating team, and boy, that was an eye-opener. She slaughtered us. To this day, I will always be thankful for her because of that relationship between the two schools. It was a competition, but at the end of it, she was gracious enough to come and congratulate me and said, you did a good job. And she took me under her wings after that, and she gave me some tips, and we became very good friends after that debate. And that was in probably 1987 or so.
Placed in Gold House at CP, Nicole recalls being involved in most extracurricular activities, but not track and field.
I was a cheerleader, not a literal cheerleader, but I never participated in any of the activities. I don't recall ever going to the stadium to watch any of the games, maybe until my last year of school. I never saw a need for it. I would support at school, but never excited me to go and watch the live competition against the other schools. I was involved in debating, key club, junior achievement. I played a little bit of lawn tennis, hated netball, so I never did any athletic or anything re-games. But those were the activities, and I was part of the home economics, or food and nutrition as we called it then, was where I spent most of my time.
Catching the school bus was something new to Nicole as a first former, but her home address made the commute rather simple once she didn't miss that early bus.
So I lived in Eden Lodge, and I took the Route 2 school bus from BIM Factory, and that took us straight to school. Now, if I missed that bus at 7 o'clock, it meant that I had to find my way to Eagle Hall and then take the bus from Eagle Hall to Coleridge and Parry and then walk up the hill, because by the time I got to Eagle Hall, the timings for the bus that went up the hill might have been gone. So it was in my best interest to take that 7 o'clock bus. When I was there, we had the transition from 40 cents to 50 cents, and then it was then when the government decided that they were going to, you could only put 10 single cents in the bus at the time. I remember that very vividly, because one morning I had my mom so upset, and she gave me 50 odd cents. I said, go take the bus. I was like, Mommy, how? And I got to school that morning.
But even with the availability of transportation, Nicole would sometimes arrive home very late from school. And here's why.
I got home late on Friday evenings because I came to youth right here in this park. That was the highlight. From the time I reached third form, there was a organization called Youth to Youth, and we would meet here every Friday evening from about 5 in the evening until whatever time we chose to finish. And every Friday night, as God sent a Friday night, I got home after 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in my school uniform, and it peeved my mother never. She was just frustrated with me. But that was my outlet to meet other people, to socialize, to learn what other people at other schools were doing at the time. That's where I became very good friends with Gail Caddo. She was the former head girl at St. Michael's. She's passed now, but she became my very good friend then. And I met the Miller boys, Miller from St. Michael's. I met so many people from different schools, and it really changed how I interacted. It changed how my perspective on learning, because what they were doing, and obviously I was at Coleridge and Parry, you know, people from St. Michael's, Harrison College, Queen's College, Comamere, at the time were reading a lot and doing a lot of things. So it made me step up my game in terms of my academics.
What she recalls are a few nicknames given to teachers, including her principal.
Hallam King. I'm sorry, Mr. King, you know, you're still Hallam. We used to call Hallam King Patch. He had a patch in the top of his head. At least that's my connection with the patch. And whenever he wore green, everybody stayed out of his way. The corridors were clear. There was like no evidence of human life present if he wore green. We knew that he was angry. We knew he was not in a good mood. So you could hear the wind blow. You could see the wind if need be. But everybody was on their P's and Q's when Hallam King wore his green. There was Mr. Holder. We used to call him bell bottoms because he always wore bell bottoms. There was Miss Sears. I am not going to say what her nickname was, but it was not a very nice one. And what's his name? The deputy principal then, Mr. Alleyne, he had a strange nickname. I don't recall what it is now, but those were the nicknames, some of the nicknames that I remember. I probably had several and don't remember. I don't think anybody called me anything. I don't recall.
Now, concerning lunch, Nicole says that her mother's cooking ensured that she avoided the canteen while at school.
So about lunch, my mother used to cook every morning and give us lunch. I never really had lunch money. I would go to the canteen occasionally, but it wasn't any place that I frequented a lot. But I remember the few times that I went, yes, there was pushing. I remember one day in class, they were doing, the lunch that day was chicken and chips. And I was in third form. Miss Sears was teaching class, and you kind of knew that that day was going to be one of those days where if you didn't get there early, you would have to push. So Lemuel Waith at the time, I was in, because I repeated third form. Lemuel Waith and I were in the same class, and we had this routine where he would do something to disrupt the class, and all of us would erupt in laughing, and then you would get put on the outside, and as you were on the outside, somebody would then run down to get in line to be one of the first at the canteen, so you can order these chicken and chips for lunch.
School is not only about books, and back in 1989, the school hosted a drug awareness seminar, and guess who we found there?
I learned that you can cook marijuana and you can also fry it. That was something that I did not know. and that some of the effects that you can have from marijuana are very bad, and other things.
What do you plan to do with the knowledge you gathered this morning?
Well, I hope to become chairman of the new Starters Club at Parry, and I will be able to spread my knowledge to the other students.
So in that video, it's only when you showed it to me that I have a small recollection of the event, and listening to it, I heard myself say that I wanted to be the chairperson of the whatever association that would have been formed at the time. I don't recall us having that organization, but I can say though, because when you showed it to me, I was like, what could I have at 15 years have said, and what would I have learned about drugs at the time? And I spoke about the cooking and the frying, that I wasn't aware of that. But as I thought about it, I thought about how it would have shaped my career path and my career choices, or like the choices of organizations and events and different things that I would have gotten involved in.
Great to hear, Nicole, but what was going on with that big hair?
At that time, wearing your hair high was in style, and as you can see, I still have the long hair, and I was not to be left out, so I used to gel it and put it, what we called it was a muff then. And yeah, so it was either a muff at the front, or you had your hair in a roll at the back. So it used to take me forever to just roll all this hair with 1,020,000 hairpins sticking you in your head all day long. You can't concentrate on schoolwork. But that was the style back then. The only two things that I was caught up with outside of the hair was the high socks, because I always believed that my ankles were too slender to be shown to the public, and the high cut shoes. There were these boots. I remember one year I got suspended for the second last day of school because the bus came late, and when we got to where St. Joseph Hospital was, we got off the bus, a group of us that took the bus from Eden Lodge. We got off the bus and we just strolled and, dilly-dallied and got to school about 10 o'clock. And when we got there, I was called to the office, and the message I got was, your mother told you to come home. I was like, huh? And my mother had given me money that morning to buy these shoes that I always wanted. And I said, my mother told me to come home. So I said, okay, and I left. But before I went home, I went and made sure I bought those shoes, because she was not to get back that money. So I bought those shoes and I went home, and my mother just was like, I sent you to school and you bought the place. And I'm like, but mommy, the school bus came late. And she was just not having it. And I remember, and I think that's where I got that whole GIS thing from. She was like, if you're not going to behave, if you're not going to do the things that you're supposed to do, GIS is the best place for you. And I was like, okay. The government industrial service school, where if you abscond and you do certain things, not that I was one of those students, but I guess that was my mother's way of discipline and keeping us in check, keeping me in check, putting the fear of God about what other people are experiencing that I wasn't necessarily experiencing. She made sure she threatened me, and I use that word in a very safe way, not in a negative light, but she made sure that I understood that she was doing her best, and that there were consequences for my actions, and if I did it not only affected me, but it also affected her, and it impacted her, because it meant time off from work for her and the other things that happen when you make bad choices.
Now, no one likes a report card filled with unflattering grades and teachers' comments, and Nicole can relate to this.
My report card always reflected, Nicole talks too much, Nicole needs to stop talking. Nicole, and it's not surprising that I got into that. Every profession that I've chosen requires me to speak. I think it served me well, having been so talkative during my school time. I've never had any disrespectful, or yes, I had lots of failures. I always failed math. I did better in the sciences, and hence the career path. The one science that I did not pass at all was chemistry. Just could not wrap my head around the chemistry. But other than that, I didn't have, I don't recall them, because in 2000, I lost one of our homes to a fire. So all my report cards, because I did keep them at that house, but so I don't have any evidence, and unless TP has evidence to say otherwise, I did not have several failures. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, you can certainly stick to that story, Nicole, but I think I know better. But what can be worse than a poor report card? Being asked to repeat a year.
So apart from the fight with John, I repeated third form, and that was a defining moment for me as well, because I remember when I got the report and I looked at it and I was like, who are they talking about? Me? Like, me repeat? Like, how am I going to explain this to my mother, first of all? So I remember waiting back at school and going to see Mr. King. And I remember telling him that if he didn't put me in fourth form, I was going to die. I was going to come up missing. I was going to live in because where Coleridge and Parry is, we have a back hill. And in the back hill, there are like little caves. I don't know if they still exist, but that's where I was going to pick up residence. And I remember asking him if he was okay with that, because there was no way that I could not see my 15-year-old self facing my mother to tell her that I had just repeated third form. And Mr. King gave me an audience, and he just calmly said, Nicole, just don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And I said, but no, you don't really understand. Are you sure? Are you prepared for me not to be present in the next school term? And he's like, Nicole, just relax. I'll take care of it. So I went home that evening and I padded up with the trap bottom, trap top, and I was prepared for blows. I was prepared for the wrath of Miss Alleyne. And she was working night duty, so she came home around 10 o'clock. And when she came home, she said nothing. But at 3 o'clock the next morning, she tapped me and she said, get up. And so these were the options. I was either going to be beaten at 3 in the morning, I was going to be taken to the GIS, or I was going to be taken to Nightingale Home, and that's where I would be living from then on. And she said, get up, get dressed. I got dressed. A vehicle came, and that confirmed then yes, I'm being taken away from my home. And we drove to Dunder Park, and we got out, and she said, we're here to do catering for your godmother's wedding reception, and I want you to do a good job. That was all I needed to hear for that time, so I did a good job. I pulled out all my food and nutrition skills, and I did the most that day. And at the end of the evening, she said, well, everybody complimented on the displays and everything. The food was good. We went home, and for a whole 10 weeks, my mother said nothing. Absolutely nothing. But when I got back to school, Hallam King called me in his office and he said, these are your conditions. You have to come in the first 3 in terms of grades, positions in class, or else. And it's non-negotiable. That's all I needed to hear. And I did come within the first 3 for those 3 semesters. And that was it. But that was a defining moment for me, because then I did not look at failure as true failure. Like, it devastated me, yes, but it also gave me the tools to navigate life on a different path, as opposed to looking at it as the end of the world, but to see it as the beginning of another world and opportunity. And as he did explain to me, Nicole, you know, sometimes failure is not a death sentence. Failure is an opportunity for you to tweak and to perfect what you already know. And that is the opportunity and the advantage that I took of that.
In addition to that, Nicole enjoyed every single day at Coleridge and Parry, whether sun or rain.
Look, the best 6 years of my life were at Coleridge and Parry. We loved when the rain fell. People came to school. I hear other students, and there were other students from other schools, some of my friends that didn't go to school like at the end of the term. I went to school every day. My friends came to school every single day. There were a group of us, Karen Scantlebury, Faith Sobers, Karen Clark, myself, Gina Yearwood. We were always at school.
Well, school days were indeed the best days for Nicole. And this is the final episode in the current series of Remembering School. Join me again soon for series number 2. I'm Sean Green.